This tutorial is designed to assist individuals who, after listening to many video presentation and reading many books regarding life, consciousness, awareness, and awakening, find themselves still asking the question, what is consciousness? What is life? What is awareness? And what is the awakening experience? We cannot embark on a definition of consciousness without first saying what life is. Life is movement, or the ability to move. Life is movement. Period. Full stop. If movement ceases, life ceases. The absence of life should not be confused with rest. In a rest phase, movement is still taking place, but movement is reduced to the minimum that is considered life. What is the difference between life and consciousness? Is it possible to be alive and not conscious? Yes, it is possible to be alive and not conscious. Consciousness is the ability to vary the movements of life. So the individual who is conscious can increase their movement or reduce their movement. The individual who is highly conscious is very skilled at doing this, increasing the movement and reducing the movement. And because that individual is so skilled at increasing movement and reducing movement, the person is also very skilled at varying or mastering their life. The individual who is not so conscious has a problem varying movements. They are poor at it. And because they are poor at it, they are poor at mastering their life. The unconscious individual, on the other hand, is unable to vary movements at all. That person cannot vary whatever movement is taking place. Being conscious is having the ability to vary, master, control movement. Again, being conscious is having the ability to vary, master, and control movement, which means you're able to vary, master, and control your life. Now, is there a difference between consciousness and awareness? Can someone be conscious and not aware? There is a difference between consciousness and awareness. Awareness is the ability to detect varying or various movements. So while consciousness is the ability to vary movement or vary life, awareness is the ability to detect the variation in the movement or to detect the variation in life. Quite interestingly, there can be people who are very aware but not very conscious. By this we mean they have the ability to detect the variation of movement or the variation of life, but they do not exercise the ability to create variation in movement or to create variation in life. For example, we have some individuals who they detect unwanted variation in life, but they do not believe they have the power or the control within themselves to vary, to control or to master or to alter the movements that they're seeing. They believe that is actually left to something outside of themselves. It's an external force that will have to do something about it. So they do detect the variation and they would want a different variation, but they do not see themselves as having the power to create the new variation in the movement that is taking place. People can be conscious and not very aware as well. In the first one scenario we put out, the person was aware but don't have the consciousness to make the change. Now we are looking at people who have the consciousness but they are not very aware. We can recognize this phenomenon at the low state of consciousness. In this scenario, the individual is actually varying movement or creating variation in life, but they are unable to detect the result that their variation causes. If the result is small, if the disturbance is small, they can't detect it. They can only recognize the variation when the result of their action has become explosive. Very often when it gets to this point, it is very difficult for them to correct or make the necessary adjustments. Do you know of any individual who, deep within yourself, you know the path they were on would not be able to take them where they wanted to go, but you have said this to them over and over, but they did not realize this until they stand in the wrong destination? They have to get to the result of the path before they recognize, this is not where I wanted to go. These are the people we talk about when we say people can be conscious, because they are able to make variation in movement, but they are not very aware as to, the small changes, the small results and disturbances. What is an awakening and how does it relate to consciousness and awareness? An awakened individual is one whose ability to vary movement and hence life is extremely high, and the ability to detect even very small variation in movements and very fast variation in movement, these abilities are also very great. The abilities are great. This individual is able to detect movement that is so fast that the average person can only see something as stationary or motionless. And they're also able to detect variation that are so small that the average individual would just ignore it as insignificant. The awakened individual makes full use of both of these abilities. The ability to vary movement, which is consciousness, and the ability to detect the variation in movement. They are therefore described as self-governing beings. If they ask you, what is the evidence of the living one in you? Say to them, it is the ability to move and the ability to rest. That's a text taken from the Gospel of Thomas. So, what is life? Life is movement. Period. Full stop. No exclamation sign and no comma. What is consciousness? Consciousness is the ability to vary movement. And what is awareness? Awareness is the ability to detect the variation that are taking place in movement. What it means to be awakened. To be awakened means to be adept in consciousness and awareness and making full use of this capacity. Now, if you were able to answer all these questions, you did a good job. Well, They do refer to variation in movement as variation in vibrational frequency. But we will leave all of that for another video, because as we said before, we are keeping it simple. We want, when you finish this video, you would have understood the definition of life, which is movement, the definition of consciousness, which is the ability to vary movement, the definition of awareness, which is the ability to detect variation in movements. This is to detect the variation, not to bring about the variation. And what it means to be awakened, to be adept in consciousness and awareness, and being able to make full use of both capacity. Now, if this tutorial was helpful to you, remember to give us a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to our channel as well, or visit us at Think Big Life Coach Center. Until then, this is Victoria Elizabeth On saying, watch your movements.